facial features, where very often the hood completely obscures them. This is Lisa's drawing of another of the bulbous-headed entities, sort of similar to what we saw with Polly's drawing earlier. And these have been reported in a number of other cases as well. Not your typical gray or reptoid or insectoid, but something seeming to have more of a porpoise-type bulbous forehead. A typical gray in a hat, right? And this happens. I remember seeing one myself when I was quite young. She said this was surprising because its mouth would open, and we have a few cases where the little slit has actually opened. So just one of Lisa's representations. This one, she says, is very similar to a figure in Linda Howe's latest book with the flat, ridged nose area. This entity, she's not real fond of at all, was involved in what she said was one of the rape scenarios she was put through. Let's see what's coming up next. Lisa's drawing of the reptilian entity that was very aggressive sexually with her as well. And again, she says, please remember, she's no artist, but it was a brown, scaly, hard exterior with the slit eyes, vertically slit eyes, and clawed appendages or fingers. And a very robust entity. Symbols that she has seen in these, and this is so typical. I mean, we could flash symbols, and so many of them are some version of the triangle and the circle. We'll see another variety of this kind of symbol a little bit later with Angie's drawings. From Anita in Texas, this is a drawing of what she called the tan ones, and she makes a very big distinction between the tans and the grays. She said the grays could care less about us. They're very official or impersonal, but the tans seem to go to a great deal of trouble to make her want to love them and to elicit love from her. She remembered at one point patting it on the face and saying, too bad it's not real. This is the drawing from Anita's granddaughter who lives with her of what she said were the mushroom men who had come into her room one night. These, however, she said were no more than maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall. You note the drawing details that she has included in 4 fingers and so on. Here's Beth's drawing in Puerto Rico of one of the doctors on board who dealt with her and her entire family in 1978 when they had a massive abduction. Jorge Martinez investigated a lot of this case, but it's only been reported in Spanish so far, so, except for what we haven't taken. Widow peak hairline, very typical reported humanoids. When Beth recalled being taken by the military to a desert area where there was an above-ground compound area, much like what Ted described, being then taken again underground through this adobe or old-type structure into a room with military where she said 2 men in astronaut suits made a presentation here in this underground room to her and a number of other military people who had her there. And she was there not by invitation but by duress. So very similar to what Ted had remembered from the mid-'80s event in Albuquerque. We don't know where these facilities might be, but, you know, Kirtland's not that far away. One of Jane, also one of the women in taken from Texas, one of the photographs of a UFO, Jane's entire scenario began with a number of overflights of UFOs witnessed by neighbors and relatives, and she was instructed on this day to clean her camera, get new film, and go out. They were going to be there. And this is one of the shots. Some of the body marks that we've talked about so many times, the triangle of punctures on Jane's arm, are typical of what most of us have had recurrently. Let's see if we can go on to some other physical marks, I believe, here. We'll see a little bit later. If not right now. I can't remember the order of these things. Yeah, this scoop mark on Jane's leg. Now, there are some scoop mark reports that we've had, including one in the family, where after the scoop begins to heal, a waxy grayish substance oozes out of this for a while, and then it heals up to the regular scoop mark that we know, and this is one instance of that happening with Jane. Jane's drawing of a memory of being before this council of long-haired, light entities. She cannot recall what they were telling her, however, but this was the best she could do to capture the feel of these faceless entities. And again, this is often a similar situation reported by other people, including one other in the book taken, Amy. An unusual scenario, Jane recalled only snatches of an encounter in which she saw robed aliens at work in one of the facilities, and she heard them listing certain places in the Texas, Louisiana area by name, certain towns and locations, and then the words activate, activate, activate. The little black box, the memory of the faces, seeing her feet as she's being carried out of here, all just very partial glimpses from an event with in Jane's recollections. And the little black box is very similar to the box used in Ted's cloning soul transfer event. And you notice these weird black tubes coming out. We're going to see that later in other drawings. Jane's most intense recent encounter she tried to relay in a series of paintings, being on the desert planet, so many people report, seeing the UFO coming in, being under control where she couldn't move, and then watching a series of changes where the UFO seemed to beam down this illuminated globe type structure with markings she couldn't really capture in all their detail. And then this going through another stage of transformation from this globe-like decorated object to a floating dark globe with antenna that began to come very close to her, so close that she became fearful she was going to be knocked off the mesa where she was sitting. And the last conscious memory she had of this event was of this globe coming up right to her face. Under regression, we found out some more information about what went on, including an implanting procedure that this globe was involved with in Jane's suppressed memories. This is Angie, the woman in Tennessee, one of the rectangular scorched areas or dead areas on her property from an event. This now for a year and a half, of course, nothing grew there. This was an event she had recalled seeing the night before, or briefly before, I can't recall if it was just exactly the night before, in which there was this rectangular device with two aliens out in the yard near the barn area, apparently taking soil samples, which of course, you know, they've been doing since time immemorial. They just can't get enough of our soil. But the mark on the ground was physically there for quite a while. And if anybody's willing to pay for some soil sample testings, we've got some. Here's the area of the rural cattle ranch where the mutilations and unexplained deaths have occurred. And you're going to see video from this area of overflights. I just wanted you to see how remote this was from any, you know, highly populated area. One of the unexplained deaths, this was not a mutilation, it was the report from the vet was unknown toxicology, and there were a number of other cases both in the Tennessee and Alabama area during this time. But there were also mutilations among the cattle on Angie's property. There's one that seems to be almost an interrupted mutilation. I'd love to get Linda's analysis of this. You see a triangular patch of skin has been cut but not taken off yet. The jawbone has been cleaned. It's like something either was human activity mimicking alien mutilations or an interrupted mutilation of some sort on a calf there. Angie's fetus, after an alien implant that she later miscarried, she actually retrieved the fetus, but under control, of course, took care of making sure it did not. Well, it was retrieved by aliens, she believes, the day later. But she saw the size of it and the features of it. She said when they came back to induce the miscarriage that this was the instrument, the long instrument that was used to induce the miscarriage vaginally, and then this little container was, she said she had no idea what the little container was for, but she did remember that also being present on the bed in her bedroom when they came to cause this loss of the child. Some of the marks from some of Angie's experiences, again, the sets of punctures correlated with consciously remembered events. One of the fetal nursery representations, this is what Angie saw, and this one is included in the book, so you can read more carefully what description she has for the various things. Very similar to what else we've heard about. Angie is an illustrator artist, so she has done a lot better with some of her recollection drawings than many others. But again, in the corner you see the little black box with those hoses running out of it, just like Jane had seen in Texas. In fact, Angie has a number of excellent illustrations, but we could do that all day. Here's one of them, one of the suited grays, which she said rarely would she see them in clothes. This one had an outfit on. And she didn't know what the little jumble of shapes on the table was. She said maybe it was art. I don't know. Nothing was explained to me. She also had encounters with, actually 7 different alien physical types. This one with the bumpy skin, the bumpy joints of the fingers, etc. And some of the aliens with which she had contact were completely human-looking, although they didn't act human, they did look human, notably brown-haired and blonde-haired humans. Here's one of the brown-haired woman and man, and he's got some equipment. We can't really see it very clearly here, as if he's scanning, I don't know, the air or something, taking readings of some sort, and the woman escorted Angie into back to the craft for her encounter later on. This was just out on her property. This one, both Angie and her husband recalled the little troll-like or dwarf-like entities coming into the room, and in fact it was her husband who was taken away in this encounter. And they both remembered all of this consciously. And these troll or dwarf-like entities turn up, as you'll see in the correlated chart of comparisons there in the book, with more than just Angie in the book, and with a lot of other people too. Again, we see one of the emblems. We've got the triangles. I think they show up almost every time unless we have the serpent showing up. She said this was on a belt that one of the entities was wearing. Our timing is a little strange here. Okay, one of the craft that Angie recalls seeing out over the property, and I have not seen a report exactly like this one before, but wanted to include some of the anomalous drawings rather than just the typical things that we often get reports about. Another one over the area, and that's the bottom view of it. It seemed like a fiery or molten-y area, very similar to what's reported in the bottom of the Gulf Breeze crown-type craft. And that craft here, you can see for comparison of size, Angie below and the craft above when she was being beamed into it. Again, out in this area that's very near the northern Alabama border where so much activity has gone on in the past, 3 or 4 years. This is a ground plan of one of the rural military facilities to which Angie was taken. A series of buildings, of areas where craft were parked, of a perimeter fence. This was, and of a rural dirt road. She was taken into one of these buildings and interrogated. And there were a number of other humans there. She said apparently also abductees besides military personnel. Close up of the view of the building into which she was being taken, and one of the people who was escorting her. And she was taken along with 3 other women on one occasion into this facility. We know of another facility into which she's been taken under conscious control. It's not the same as this one. This strange little craft, from one point of view, looks like a winged aircraft from the military. You've got a little flag on it. The other side, not there. And that back compartment is where she and the 3 other women were placed when they were picked up and taken to a facility. In one of the underground places that Angie recalls seeing was what she called the upturned helicopter, or the rotorless helicopter. And again, we have gotten reports from around the country over the, through the past of similar copter-type devices that apparently are not copters. 2 pictures. Angie was taking pictures of overflight trails, and here it just does not show up. But if we could look at these up close, these are taken identical, moments apart, snap, snap. And in one is a very small object that under enlargement appears to be a spacecraft. It's not there in the other one, so we need more analysis on that. Now on to Amy in Texas. This is a drawing of her conscious recollection of her first UFO sighting in Denton, Texas in the early years. Let's see what's coming up next. Lisa's drawing of the reptilian entity that was very aggressive sexually with her as well. And again, she says, please remember, she's no artist, but it was a brown, scaly, hard exterior with the slit eyes, vertically facial features, where very often the hood completely obscures them. This is Lisa's drawing of another of the bulbous-headed entities, sort of similar to what we saw with Polly's drawing earlier. And these have been reported in a number of other cases as well. Not your typical gray are slit eyes, and clawed appendages are fingers. And a very robust entity. Symbols that she has seen in these, and this is so typical. I mean, we could flash symbols, and so many of them are some version of the triangle and the circle. We'll see another where the little slit has actually opened. So just one of Lisa's representations. This one, she says, is very similar to a figure in Linda Howe's latest book with the flat, ridged nose area. This entity, she's not real fond of at all, was involved in what she said was one of the rape scenarios she was put through. Reptoid or insectoid, but something seeming to have more of a porpoise-type bulbous forehead. A typical gray in a hat, right? And this happens. I remember seeing one myself when I was quite young. She said this was surprising because its mouth would open, and we have a few cases